Topics for discussion and action. On our agenda this evening, I will reiterate our mandate. The mandate of the Commission, set out in the Washington State Redistricting Act, is to accomplish state legislative and congressional redistricting in accordance with the Washington State Constitution. The bipartisan commission was created to listen to the public every 10 years so that districts would be drawn by statute and with public input. Each commissioner was appointed to this commission. The 4 voting commissioners were appointed by the Democratic caucus in the House, Republican caucus in the House, the Republican caucus in the Senate, or the Democratic caucus in the Senate. I was appointed by the 4 voting commissioners. As chair of the commission, I will articulate and manage the commission's process. In my role as chair, I will ensure the process is as participatory, fair, and equitable as is possible. The 4 voting commissioners have power and responsibility to vote, ultimately creating and adopting a redistricting plan. Voting commissioners will make decisions that will create maps to best represent the interest of Washingtonians. Those of you from the public joining us this evening, welcome. It is my goal to engage communities across Washington State as fully as I can and hear and address your concerns and requests. Throughout our tenure as commissioners, we will hear public comments that are important, ideas, requests, and injustices that may fall outside our ability to effectively respond. There are issues you may bring forward in your public comments that we may not be able to address. We can listen to you and be sure to capture your thoughts, questions, and requests. I will do my best to synthesize these and we will respond to them as we are able. We will certainly deliberate on the issues where we do have jurisdiction. Where we don't, I will do my best to refer you to those who may be able to respond most effectively. Together as a commission, we have agreed to the following values and mission: to provide an open, transparent, credible process that is grounded in statute and where all voices are welcome and there's access for everyone. To conduct ourselves with transparency, respect, and civility, where commissioners will participate and negotiate in good faith, and to meet the deadline outlined by law, and to produce the best possible maps. I would now like to call roll. Commissioner Brady Walkinshaw.
Present.
Commissioner Joe Fain.
Present.
Commissioner April Sims.
Present.
And Commissioner Paul Graves.
Present.
Before we begin our program this evening, I'd like to call for the approval of meeting minutes for the meeting we held on June 21st, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
A second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, none opposed. The motion passes. I would now like to offer our Executive Director, Lisa McLean, an opportunity to provide the director update.
Good evening, Commissioners. My report is divided into 3 sections. I thought I'd deliver each section of it and then stop after each section to see if you have any comments. I wanted to start with the communications update, then a budget update, and then a report on the group quarters and the relocation of persons in group quarters to their last known address. So the communications update, in case you didn't see it, the Chair Augustine did an excellent Q&A with the Washington State Wire last week, and you can find that linked on our website. So that's, we haven't done a whole lot of press lately, but that was one of them recently. The website is running smoothly. We've received a number of compliments on the site within the state, but also from outside. Montana wrote us and said that they think our website's so great that they're going to steal some of our ideas. So that's kind of a high form of praise. The website is handling hundreds of visitors a day. We average about 150 visitors to the site per day. 2/3 are being referred, meaning that they are clicking at a link that they might have found someplace else, like on one of our ads or the like. That stat gives us a big indication of how successful our advertising campaign is in driving traffic to the site. Since we added the mapping tool the week of January 6th, About 40% of all traffic to the site has visited the mapping page. And in fact, we have 150 people who signed up to create maps and have actually kind of tested and are working to test maps, test the creation of maps through that mapping thing. Just moments ago, you now can go to participate and you can find in Spanish and in English the animated videos on the website saying how to engage. We're going to also put some money behind that process to put some ads out to inform people of the options that they have to engage with your work. In the last week, the 3 most visited pages were the public outreach meeting schedule, the Draw Your Map, the Draw Your Wall mapping page, and the Draw Your Wall community of interest page. Social media, our ads promoting the second round of public outreach. In the last 48 hours alone, those ads have been seen by over 15,000 people. On Instagram, we have reached about 100,000 accounts in the last 30 days with our content. And our Facebook ads are doing very well, especially in rural Washington, which is where we're seeing some of the most engagement with our content. We also have recently worked with our partners, August Creatives, the ones who created our website, to create content that isn't related directly to turning out people for commenting and meetings, but we'll start to trickle that out, sort of about the process. It's more focused on the process. So I mentioned our second animated video. Our first animated video should have been posted now on our YouTube channel in 9 languages. And starting tomorrow, we're going to start pushing out that first, those different language videos to specific language groups and organizations that we know are targeting those groups of languages. TVW reached out to ask if they could have access to our branded materials. They specifically want to have clips from our animated videos to use in ads that they're going to run to promote their coverage of the commission's work. And I'm coming to the end of this communications part. Then we produced street banners and posters and handouts that we are in the process of delivering to all libraries and auditor offices. We've already gotten some really good feedback from different people who sent us emails saying, thanks so much for that. We could really use this and the like. So we're hopefully you'll see that soon. We have a few in the office if you have any ideas about where we should send that. And lastly, we had reached out to OSPI, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, to gauge their interest in promoting the mapping software to the education community for use by teachers and students in the fall. And they just got back to us today. They said that they're going to include a write-up about the redistricting process in their newsletter to educators. And they've invited us to deliver a presentation at a civic summit that they're putting together at the end of, for late September. So we'll hear more about that and see if we can't engage on that. So that's a mouthful. Any questions on communications or any clarifications required? Commissioner Sims?
Yeah, thank you so much for that report. I had just a couple of things. I thought I heard you say when our mapping tool went live on January 6th, and I think maybe you meant July 6th. So just so we're capturing that in the minutes correctly. But I think that's really exciting. I'm wondering, is there a way to track which of the videos that are available in multiple languages, which videos are getting the most traction? So we have a sense of the language demand moving forward?
Because they're posted on our YouTube channel, I'm almost positive I could say yes. I am somewhat technologically challenged, so I'd like to get back to you on that, but I'm almost positive that if it's on the YouTube, we should be able to see how many clicks there are.
Okay.
So I'll double check that and I will get back to you only if I'm wrong on that point.
That sounds great. I just think it would be interesting to find out, which languages, folks are accessing the most, and that might be a good data reference as we're moving forward and thinking about outreach.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned the flyers and the other material that we're getting out to the auditor's offices. Is that what I heard you say?
And libraries.
And libraries. And do they have a plan for moving those out, or should folks go by the auditor and libraries in order to get those flyers and that information? I'm not sure I understood the plan around it.
Mostly it's about them as a site where people are coming to, that they'll see it. And for me, I think the auditors, you're right. You have to have specific business at the auditor's office, and you go there, you see a poster. Since even the auditors are also going to be soon involved with redistricting themselves, I think it's also a useful tool for them. But they can also send it out to their to the cities, the posters that they have, the city offices. But the libraries, I think, are really key in terms of they've been our partners, and they are going to basically either post the poster. It was when we were doing the census last year, they would oftentimes hang the banners. So they can hang the banners, especially when some of these places are still working remotely and it's just drive up. Then the banner there is kind of a helpful reminder and something that's nice to see. But there'll also be posters and the flyers and handouts that can be handed out as people come in.
Okay, that's great. I know you mentioned open to feedback and ideas around additional outreach to get those materials out. I'm happy to talk to you more offline. Just curious, have we had any conversations or done any outreach with our colleges and universities?
We have not, but we
Okay.
could. Yeah.
Okay, I'll follow up. I've got some ideas around that, so I'm happy to follow up. And lastly, I just think that outreach to the OSPI was really creative, and I'm excited to hear more about where that goes. I think we've talked a lot about reaching out to students and getting them engaged in the process. So I appreciate you doing that. Thanks for your report tonight.
And indeed, that was like Commissioner Fain mentioned that really early on, and it was when I was working on the census. It was I had a contact with the social studies, the guy who heads up the social studies for everybody. It didn't work so well with the census, but I really think that he's really excited about this and sees a way to be able to use that. And so I'm glad that we've been able to use that contact more successfully than I did during the census. Other comments? Okay, so I'll continue with the budget update. I sent to you all a budget report. This is kind of what you could say is the end of the year report. Because the fiscal year ended on June 30th. I must say that the final is going to be probably a little bit higher because we're still collecting June invoices. So we can still today pay invoices that are for work that was performed in June, but it's only marginally, very small. I mean, it's like, I think I'm missing one of the interpreter bills and the like. So basically we have ended the FY fiscal year 21. We ended having spent $536,087 of our $1 million. We spent a lot of time trying to front load a lot of expenses, make sure that they get expensed in this last year. Including like the website, the purchase, we got the laptops and the printers, all equipment purchases. I really think there will not be any more equipment purchases or anything from here on out. We've got licenses, we've got everything we need. So I think and then you can also see, I thought it was interesting the way I put together the outreach to see that on average, we spent about close to 100,000 doing public outreach stuff on that. And again, in that is not been billed yet, these banners and the handouts and the like, but you can get a sense of things there. What I did in putting this report together is I took it and put it into something more familiar line items that seem to sort of speak as opposed to what I was getting from, if I leave it in the arcane way that I got it, that we're managing the funds in the state, it doesn't speak to what exactly money was spent on. So I spent the day and Friday trying to put it into something where you can see where money's being spent. So that's how it is for this first fiscal year. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Commissioner Fain?
Yeah, I was just double checking. Our last year we had a $1 million roughly budget, and then is that the case for then this upcoming calendar year?
No, we have a budget for the upcoming calendar year of 1.6.
Okay.
1.63.
All right. So the whole budget for the operations of the commission this year is around then 2.6 roughly?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Great. Thanks.
Commissioner Graves?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Lisa, thanks for putting this together. I was trying to have a hard time trying to look at these current line item spends and compare them against our initial budget that we talked through. As looking through it, is there anything that gives you pause or concern that we're overspending in a particular area at the moment?
Myself, no. I think, yeah, no, I'm not worried about, I guess I didn't really, I wasn't really handed a line item budget that I was be honing myself to, because was told that it's sort of, you need to do what you need to do to get the thing set up. I think going into, I was able to work with the LSS on the preparation of our line item budget for the next year. And I have more or less, but again, it was somewhat speculative because of the different, what might come to pass. Either we're not going to spend money, or we might be spending, more money in certain areas. So, we can project out the budget, the salary budgets, but a lot of the stuff was sort of a little bit vague as to. But the people from LSS said that was okay, that the line items are somewhat, they're rough, and it's okay if we expend over that. And it's the overall sum that's important. Commissioner Augustine?
Yeah, so just to clarify that we're substantially under budget for 2021 or fiscal year 2021, is that right?
Yeah. Okay, so that's that, if there's no more questions. And the last thing is I just wanted to give you a sort of, it's not exactly a final report, but it is a final report on the process that's been undertaken to implement the RCW 44.05.140, which is the relocation of certain individuals to their previous known address. So I think I've told you that we've been working with that. We hired a GIS analyst, and he actually spent a lot of the last month making sure that information that we got from the Department of Children, Youth and Families, from the Department of Social and Human Services, and from the Department of Corrections was full in terms of its information, that it was in the right format, that it was what we could use, that he could use to geocode. He has now managed to geocode everything, and what that means is he's basically been able to find if you understand, an XY coordinate for all of the locations from which we need to transfer people, and XY coordinate for the individuals to where they will be transferred. Okay, so we had to get that data together to give to the software developer so that he can start to prepare to put that in when the PL data comes on August 16th to integrate with that, right? So I just wanted to give you a report of real numbers. We received 18,189,000 names, okay, or names and addresses. Of that, 17,102 were from the Department of Corrections. That's about 94% of the list. 3.6 were from DSHS at 652 names, and then 435 were from DCYF, or about 2.4%. Of that, we were able to relocate 15,259, or 84% of the 18,000. Of those we did not relocate are, number one, by statute, those who live out of state are not to be relocated. They're to stay where they are. And the out of state included 634 people, which is about 3.5% of the entries. Then there were a number of addresses that were not provided, and that made up about 1,142 people, or about 6.3% of the addresses. 319 of the addresses, or 1.8, were addresses that were unable to be geocoded because they were PO boxes or county. I saw in eyeballing the Department of Corrections list, there was somebody who said they were their last known address was Spokane County. That's not enough to sufficiently determine what their congressional and legislative district are. And then there was 835, or 4.6%, that had an inaccurate geocoding, which is basically there were typos. There were typos, or there was a non-existent address. If you think of someone who may have been incarcerated 10 years ago, they say they lived on Main Street and the Main Street's been bulldozed. Right now, that address doesn't exist, so you can't locate somebody there. We did go through that list, and we were able to actually save some of those addresses, as in finding somebody who wrote court as CRT as opposed to CT, which the program doesn't recognize CRT as court, but they recognize CT as court. So we were able to fix some of them and therefore locate them. So we feel pretty good about that, but that's kind of the status of the geocoding and the information that we have on that. So 15,259,000 addresses are being reallocated. So that's my report on that. Any questions?
Commissioner Fain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we know how many, and again, I'm not entirely familiar with this issue, but do we know how many states passed the type of legislation that Washington did and how many did not?
I think it, Commissioner Fain, I'd be glad to get back to you on it. There is a figure, I think it's 16. And a lot of people are in the same boat that we are, that doing it for the first time. Colorado's doing it for the first time. California's doing it for the first time. The people that most of us are looking to is Maryland, who has done it before. They were one of the first, but I'd be glad to get you that data, but I think it's about 16.
And was there any litigation or controversy about it when Maryland started doing it?
Yeah, the Maryland, somebody sued. And in fact, one of the people we were in contact with, there was kind of a all state or several states got together and talked to Maryland. Maryland did get sued. And that one of the biggest pieces of advice they gave us was basically write down your process, because they got sued, but the suit didn't go anywhere because of the fact that they wrote down their process and to apply the process consistently. So that was really, it was right about the time that our GIS analyst joined us. And it was such a useful lesson that Tom Jensen and I had gotten. The first thing we said to Justin, you know, let's be consistent about this. Let's make rules to what we throw out, what we don't throw out, you know, when we relocate, when we don't, when is it sufficient or not sufficient, and that. So that was the process that we used.
How prescriptive was the legislation that passed? Did it say to throw out individuals that had PO boxes, or who just said that their residence was a county, or, you know, or were?
No,
okay.
No, it was not. And it was basically that the intent, I mean, it says the legislation, because I actually have it here, is sufficiently specific to determine the congressional and state legislative districts in which the inmate's last known place of residence is located. Okay, so that is the thing. We need to locate it in a block, right? And that was, sometimes we couldn't get it into a block. So that was where our problem was, you know. And there is, the specific is on this out of state, that is specific. They give it specific instruction what to do with an out of stater.
Sorry to ask so many questions on this, but I'm looking at those things that are possible attractants for problems down the road. Are there other states of the 16 that have made different decisions about what data to keep or throw out, or how to characterize different data, or is everybody fairly uniform in how they're treating that?
I think everybody's making their own rules. And one of the things is that actually, like with this out of state, there are different rules with regard to it. There are several different states that actually say you actually just you take the prison population, you take it down to 0. So if you can't solve it or anything, it just becomes null and void. And that is explicitly not what our legislation says. Our legislation enables us to leave them at the location if we can't resolve it. So that is a difference in legislation. But I'll be glad to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, again, thank you for running through those things with me.
Commissioner Sims.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we're carving out some time for this conversation. I want to make sure that I understood you right, that there are 634 out of state, 1,142 with no addresses, 319 with no addresses that you could attach a geocode to. And then there must have been some additional data that I didn't capture there.
835, which would give you an inaccurate geocode.
Okay.
Where, I mean, one of the, like, for instance, there was a good one that I saw was, I think it was, you know, I want to say Auburn, an Auburn type place where you know that all of the addresses have 5 digits, you know, in them, and it was 4 digits. Well, we can't imply what the digit is,
Sure.
you know, and if it's not got a zip code with it, then it's, you know, how can we make that up? But it was a typo. Probably the person meant to put, the person or even the data enterer meant to put in 5 digits, and, you know.
So are there plans to attempt to resolve some of these outstanding questions, or what's the next step?
I think it's pretty much done. We have been resolving it. When we got the first file we got from the Department of Corrections, actually was missing a lot more. And Department of Corrections went back in June, they spent June re-interviewing people in the prison system, basically, and even they kind of devised a new questionnaire to approach people with, would you like to correct this? One of the things is that Department of Corrections originally assembled their file based on the intake forms. And when the person comes in, this legislation may not have been passed, right? And so it doesn't say, make sure you make this real accurate, because then we'll be able to, relocate you. So that wasn't the intention. So when they just pulled the data, raw, there was, I think it was 40% of it had a recognizable address. So the Department of Corrections they drew up a questionnaire, talked to us about it and stuff, and really even used the language to the those who are in incarceration to say, please try to give us something that's useful, because then we'll be able to do this. So it was, they were encouraged, and I was really surprised when they came back with such a much improved list. I think it was 95% that they could find an address to attach to.
So I see that Commissioner Fain has his hand up, but I think the last question that I have is, just so I'm clear then, the roughly 16% that we couldn't reconcile, maybe it's slightly less than that with the out of state, those numbers remain geotagged with the prison location because we could not find an address for them?
Yeah, and it's 12%. Yeah. If we take out the out of state, it comes to 12%.
12%.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I have a lot more questions. I don't know what they all are yet, so I'll hold. Thank you.
Commissioner Fain?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just really quickly, you may have said this and I missed it, but how did the populations break down from corrections versus DSHS versus the juvenile system?
So 94% was corrections. DSHS was 3.6%, and DCYF is 2.4%. And that's 17,000 versus 650 versus 435.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Graves?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Do you know when when corrections went back and talked to people, if they couldn't at first match their address or have good information on it, were they requiring proof of anything, or were they just asking people to say what their address? Just wherever it was?
I guess one last question. Is there a breakdown of where in this, an aggregated breakdown of where in the state, what zip codes or census blocks or whatever folks ended up being placed in after this process? And was there any, just be interested to know how this change in the law actually might have, if it was complete wash based on people coming from all parts of the state, or if there were particular outliers.
We have not done that analysis. I can ask Justin if he can do something on that front. I'm not sure. I think he was just looking at them, what do you call it, FIPS numbers. I don't even think he knows where it is, because he was just sort of geocoding. But I can ask him if he's got something like that. Commissioner Augustine?
Yeah, I wonder if it would be worthwhile to revisit this issue in our August meeting, so we can review additional questions from the commissioners and create a report that we can do a report out at our next meeting in August. Do you think that would be possible to do, Lisa?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
And I think what that would do is give the commissioners some flexibility to think about what additional questions there are, and they can then send those to you and the staff, and we can make it a discussion item and have a comprehensive conversation. Does that sound like something that would be useful, commissioners? All right.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's my report. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks very much, Lisa. We appreciate that. And I'd like to move on to our next agenda item. We have, which is our discussion. We have just one discussion item this evening. So during our discussion, I will call you in an order I will use throughout this meeting, so each of you can anticipate when it's your turn. And the order this evening is Commissioner Fain, Commissioner Sims, Commissioner Graves, and Commissioner Walkinshaw. So our discussion item this evening is regarding dates for the release of preliminary draft maps. And so I would like to open the discussion by talking about how we're thinking that we are going to release draft maps. And so I have one of the things that I have heard as we've been throughout our discussions over time is that it might be useful for each commissioner to release a congressional district map and a legislative district map. And so I wondered if we could, if you would be open to discussing that, and then some possible dates for the release of those maps. So why don't we begin with Commissioner Fain, if you would be open, or if you have comments or questions regarding this topic.
No, absolutely. I agree. I think it's a great topic, and it's very timely that we bring it up in order to preserve in this really concentrated timeline of getting data really at the beginning of September, the late August, needing to have the final product by November, to have any sort of opportunity for public engagement or public comment on these maps. There really needs to be something that that is tangible for folks to react to, probably by mid to late September. So you know, I am supportive of each redistricting commissioner bringing forth one state and one federal map. Certainly happy to talk about any details or specifics on timing. But again, I think it will be provide an important thing for the public to react to and give us some really good information through this process. So again, I would target that week of you know, the week of the 20th perhaps of September as an opportunity, and maybe we do congressional one week and state the next week. But I'm completely amenable to what the group thinks makes sense.
Terrific. And we have some dates to suggest, but I'd like to, you know, I would like to hear from the other commissioners to see what comments or questions you have. Commissioner Sims.
You know, I think that sounds right. If I understand it correctly, the data is available in its legacy format on August 16th. We're still looking at that as our timeline, and it will take staff about a week or so to put it in a usable format. If that's still right, and that's what we anticipate, barring any hiccups, I don't see why we couldn't agree to release draft maps for public consideration and comment sometime near the end of September. I'm happy to, you know, look at dates and potentially roll out, you know, federal maps and then legislative maps, or either or. I don't have a strong preference over either, but I think now is the time to let the public know when we might have some drafts available for their consideration.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Sims. Commissioner Graves.
I likewise agree that it would be good to have particular dates. I think it would be a useful exercise for the public to know when those dates are going to be, and I think it would be good for all of us as well, so that you know, we can all be straightforward and release maps on the same day and have them kind of all out there at the same time. And so I'm certainly open to it. And my only, I know we have maybe some potential proposed dates. I guess the one wrinkle in there could be if for some reason we don't actually get the data on August 16th and sometime later, but maybe we could have some kind of build in for then where it's, you know, if it's August 16th, we do it some particular days. And then if it's after that, then we do maybe like a 1 month rollout from there or something like that. But I'm absolutely agreeable to releasing maps and to doing them on particular days.
Thank you, Commissioner Graves. And And thank you for bringing up the ambiguity about when the legacy data is available. We understand that the legacy data will be available on August 16th, and our ambition is that our staff will have it in a usable format by Monday, August 23rd. And so the reason this item is just a discussion item is because we just don't have clarity about that yet. So we don't want to take action at this time until we have some further clarity about that. Commissioner Walkinshaw.
Thank you, Commissioner Augustine, for getting us all aligned around this idea. I think it's really good. I'm very supportive. I like the idea of having the two sets of maps roll out on different dates. I like the dates you've proposed, contingent. I would just agree with what Commissioner Graves has said. You know, for whatever reason, the data come, you know, a few weeks delayed, we might need to readjust, but assuming things work out on time, I like the idea of setting a date, September 21st works, and then the September 28th. The one thing I would put out there for consideration, and I'm fine either way, but I might make a light case to have the legislative maps go before the congressional maps, just because they impact more people and more legislators, and they might want more time to parse through it. And I also think that the congressional maps might get more media attention. So it might be nice to let the legislative maps go first, so maybe they get dedicated attention when they first go, but I could go either way. But I thought I would consider flipping the order.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Walkinshaw. So the proposed dates that the staff would propose would be if we receive legacy data on Monday, August 16th, and we're able to get that into a usable format by Monday, August 23rd, then we could potentially release the first, or you all would be able to release your first draft maps by Tuesday, September 21st. And the second set of maps could be released then on Tuesday, September 28th. And so I guess what I'd like to do in the next round is to ask if those dates seem reasonable to you. It's approximately 4 weeks after the release of usable data. So 4 weeks feels comfortable. And then I would also like to take up Commissioner Walkinshaw's proposal that on that first date, we could release state maps, and on the second date, congressional maps. So beginning with Commissioner Sims.
Are you just asking for feedback on these specific dates?
Yeah,
I'm
right.
fine with that. I wasn't sure if you were looking for a motion or what we were doing here, but
No, this is just a discussion this evening. We're not going to take action because I don't want to lock us in when we don't know when that data is going to come down. So, Commissioner Sims, are you open to the release, following Commissioner Walkinshaw's suggestion that we would begin with the state maps or legislative district maps?
Sure, I'm amenable to that. I think that's fine.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Graves, what do you think of these dates, and also Commissioner Walkinshaw's suggestion?
Both make sense to me.
Terrific. Commissioner Walkinshaw, you're next.
I support the dates, and I know that you didn't want to take action on them, but it might be nice for the public to know that if things keep going according to plan with our getting the data, those are the dates that we're committing to. But yeah. I support those dates.
Terrific. And I wonder if we could even get those on our website tentatively. I mean, if you're in agreement, we could post those. And we can say when we post them, hey, these are our proposed dates, and we'll know more when we receive the data. Commissioner Fain, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would support the dates. I would support the phasing of the legislative coming first. I would support putting it on the website to give the public some idea. The one last thing that I might add in there is that we would submit all of our maps essentially embargoed to staff, and that they would all be released at once on the website. And so the release is done in a coordinated manner.
Thank you. I think that makes good sense. And so if we could just do a final round on that topic that you've raised, Commissioner Fain, beginning with Commissioner Graves. Do you have a comment?
I think it's a good idea.
Great. Commissioner Walkinshaw?
Sorry, I think that's great. I agree. I like that.
Great. And I'm just going to skip you, Commissioner Fay, because you just made the suggestion. Commissioner Sims?
Yeah, I think that sounds right. The only thing I'd like to add either to this conversation tonight or to a follow-up conversation is exactly what the public comment and feedback process will look like, so the public knows how best to engage. But I guess that's not something that we have to decide now, as long as the public knows approximately when the maps will be available. But I'd like to dive into that conversation soon.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Commissioner Sims. Okay, and Commissioner Payne, any additional comments?
That's good.
All right, so before we move on to the period for public comment, I just want to ask if the commissioners have any additional thoughts or comments at this time on this discussion item. All right, thank you. Let's move on to public comment. Before public comment tonight, I would like to summarize what I have heard from the public since our last meeting on June 21st. That is to say, our last business meeting on June 21st. Since that meeting, the Commission received a majority of its public comment during the 4 public outreach meetings that were held. After the conclusion of our first round of public outreach meetings in late June, the pace of public comment slowed, perhaps because of the holiday weekend and general summary holiday period. During the public outreach meetings for Congressional District 2, we had 16 people give comments. The comments focused on legislative district boundaries, with comments received regarding legislative districts 10, 21, 38, 40, 42, and 44. During the public outreach meeting for Congressional District 10, we had 18 people give comments. Again, the discussion largely focused on legislative district boundaries, particularly in the South Tacoma area. We heard from several participants about the importance of keeping military communities in and around JBLM in the 10th Congressional District. That is the joint base of Lewis McChord. During the public outreach meeting for Congressional District 9, we had 28 people give comments. In this meeting, there were more comments on congressional rather than legislative boundaries. The congressional district comments largely pertain to objections to the inclusion of the cities of Bellevue and Mercer Island in Congressional District 9, the need to maintain the majority-minority status of the district, and suggestions to include areas in South King County, such as White Center, Burien, Muckleshoot, and Auburn in the district. The legislative district comments focused on district boundaries in and around the communities of Renton, Kent, Des Moines, and Bellevue. During the public outreach meeting for Congressional District 8, we had 22 people give comments. The comments largely dealt with the question of whether Congressional District 8 should include the counties of Douglas, Chelan, and Kittitas on the east side of the Cascade Crest. During the public outreach meeting, a majority of participants favored the current configuration. After the meeting, we did receive 4 comments expressing the opposite opinion. During the meeting, we also received comments on legislative boundaries, particularly about Legislative District 13 and its large size. The majority of public comments we have received through email have addressed the legislative lines in the Bremerton area of Congressional District 6. There also were comments regarding not dividing Native and minority populations, such as the Nooksack tribe and the Lummi Nation. Lastly, there was a request for the Commission to recognize the work of Dr. Dick Morrill, a geographer who drew Washington's 1970s maps, as well as maps for the state of Mississippi and the city of Seattle. Dr. Morrill is Professor Emeritus at the University of Washington. This short summary of all the comments we received by no means does justice to what the commissioners have read and heard. Recordings of the public outreach meetings can be found on our website. We invite you all to follow these meetings at your convenience, and we invite your commentary throughout this process as we try to stitch together a puzzle that best cuts the state into 10 congressional and 49 legislative districts. I would now like to move into the period for public comment. You are always welcome to sign up for public comment period. We cut off registration by noon on commission business meeting days and 24 hours prior to each regional meeting. We have 8 participants who've registered to make a public comment this evening, so we will assign each speaker 2 minutes. Tonight, our web tech, Sean Murray, will facilitate. Sean will call your name, at which time your status in Zoom will change from observer to panelist. And when Sean calls your name, you will have 2 minutes to speak. A countdown clock will appear on your screen. At the end of the allotted time, you will be muted. We realize that 2 minutes is a very brief time in which to share your comments. We're interested in what you have to say and urge you to send your written comments to us via the following email address: comments@redistricting.wa.gov. Sean?
Good evening, commissioners. So of the 8 individuals who have signed up to testify, we have 2 who are currently in the meeting. We have Deborah McDaniel and Sandra Miller. Deborah, if you can turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Hi, first of all, I wanted to thank you folks for all your very hard work that you've been doing. I really, really appreciate it. I'm from Bremerton, and you heard me last time, and I'm going to kind of repeat myself. I believe that this is a rare opportunity to address a decades-long racist insult to the people of color in Bremerton. Contrary to what some would say, having our city split into 3 legislative districts means a dilution of our voice with the state. Some reps have a district that's distinctly rural, except for the small piece of Bremerton that's in their district. So I believe that the citizens of Bremerton deserve a rep who lives in, is familiar with, and is passionate about our city and will represent us fairly. I also want to add, she's not in my legislative district, but I think we have such a person in Emily Randall and would be delighted if she were representing the whole city. That was all I had to add. I thank you for the opportunity and for the wonderful hard work you're doing.
We appreciate your input. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Our final testifier will be Sandra Miller. If you can turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Welcome, Sandra. We can't quite hear you yet.
Sandra, I would try and click there right above the mute button. There should be a little caret pointing up. You might need to select a different microphone. We can still not hear you. I see that your audio is connected, so I know that we can't hear you just because the wrong input is selected.
So Sandra, in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, there is a little microphone. It's in the lower left of my screen. It looks like a little microphone, and there's a word mute under it. And so to the right of that little microphone icon, there's a little symbol, and it's what Sean called a caret. And if you click on that, it might give you more than one microphone to select. And so you would select try selecting a different one if it gives you an option. I know it's frustrating. I'm so sorry. So if you'd like, our staff are willing to reach out to you and help you to join a coming meeting. If you would like to do that, perhaps you would be available to join another meeting, and our staff will reach out to you and help you to do that. I know it's so frustrating. Thank you for taking the time and for giving it a shot, and we'll make it happen. We'll figure out a way to make it work. We're glad you're here, Sandra, and we appreciate your dedication and willingness to be here. Okay, so I'm sorry it didn't work out this evening, but next time. And Lisa, thank you for that kind offer, and if you'd be willing to reach out to Sandra, that would be terrific. Okay, so public testimony is the last item on our agenda this evening. And so Sean, is there anyone else ready to testify?
There is not, Chair, and the other individual who did testify has left the meeting.
Terrific. All right, thank you. So at this time, I would just like to thank you, commissioners, for your service and for your time and your attention this evening, and your careful attention to all of the details in the work of carrying this commission forward. Thank you. We appreciate your leadership on behalf of all of the residents in the state. To members of the public who have taken the time to join us, those who spoke and also those who just joined us in a different way, thank you for choosing to be here and to support and be part of this process, this very important process that's crucial to our democracy. I want to thank staff who have helped to prepare the commission for this meeting. Lisa McLean, Jamie Nixon, Paul Campos, Osta Davis, Anton Gross, and Ali O'Neill provided staff support for the discussion item. Tom Jensen and Justin Bennett provided information and help regarding the web tool and portions of the chair's update. Sean Murray provided tech support. Maria Garza provided admin support, including taking minutes. Thank you to Lisa and Becky from the Legislative Support Services for your continued support. And special thanks to those who provided interpretation services this evening, both American Sign Language and